everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Tuber. Welcome back. This is your 6 Suits LA Season 1. Hey everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Tuber. Welcome back. This is your 6 Suits LA episode review. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe out there in the big old world. I don't like the weather here in New York. I really don't know. I understand why Ted Black left. Well, among other reasons, but I'm going to say, the weather has been very inconsistent here. One day it's super sunny, and then the next day it's really cold. So I'm like, it's really hard to kind of properly, weather clothe up, whatever the terminology is. But here we are, episode 6, which, after last week's episode, which I claimed to be the best of the season, it felt like the one that finally hooked me in. This episode was a nice follow-up to it. I don't quite think it was. There was a couple of moments of questionability of how it was presented. But at the end of the day, this kind of concluded a little mini chapter in the story. And by the way, this is only a 13-episode season, so we're after next week's episode, we're already halfway through the season. But with this, how they kind of wrapped it up, it kind of felt like it was a good way to palate cleanser time. We could just kind of go in to the second half and see what's next. It's kind of like next week is for me, I'm completely blind on what's going on because nearly everything we've kind of set up to do from episode 1 in a very weird way has been resolved. In a matter of speaking, there's still things that can still continue. Obviously, there are going to be problems. It's not going to be a perfect transition, but there's going to be some things to keep going. Some things. But what I will claim, is just how everything kind of finished up at the end. I really did enjoy that. Certain character interactions were really nice to see. Some were not, but at the end of the day, it's not. We've already started on a very shaky foundation. The fact that we're getting somewhere more tangible as we rise up the ladder has been very. That's what I kind of want to see. That's really what I want to see. But I want to talk about it. Well, that all being said, let's go for the Butcher recap and talk about this week's episode of Suits LA. So we pick right up where kind of where last week left off. Not 100% really speaking. We get to see another day of deliberation between Ted and the prosecutor over the format of the producer who is now served the trial. I forgot exactly what witness they have on stand right now. I know they're going for another witness deliberation right now, and then we get a little bit of a segue over to where Kevin is interviewing the producer after Kevin figured out that the producer actually was lying on his original police statement, where he claimed he didn't know about it when the statement that he was writing was actually from a script he never got to produce. But he and one other lawyer, Rick, was the only ones that ever touched that script. So, which means that this was not a publicly available script. Which he goes for the confession, admits the entire truth, what the hell really happened. Going along the lines of that. I forgot exactly how the confession goes. Apparently, the reason why the gun was even out in the first place because the guy who died whipped it out for some particular reason. I completely forgot why. And one thing led to another. There was a very heated moment. The producer really didn't have much of an opportunity. It's either one of them's going to die. That's kind of the mood, the mindset he was in. And he was trying to figure out, how do I get out of this? And he had no choice but to shoot the trigger, making it a self-defense kill. However, of course, he got really scared by the time the police got him and they took him away. That he didn't really have a choice but to try and maintain that he was innocent. And now, obviously, Kevin's still pissed at him. He does believe him now because, Kevin's been doing this for so many years that he kind of knows when someone's telling the truth and when someone's bullshitting. So that's kind of really the big question mark with that one right now. So what do they do now? Do they tell Ted, who, again, is in the middle of defending this guy with his life? And I do know there's a brief moment between... actually, no, wait, not quite yet. We don't get that moment yet. We do see a scene where Erica is walking back to... We cut over to Erica. I believe she's leaving her main building. I forgot exactly what the context is. And I know behind her is Stuart, who is prepared to offer her a job. The job she originally was supposed to get from Rick. because Stewart still sees potential and that, Ted at this point in the case is going to lose. So he wants to offer her the best chance of jumping ship when the loss happens. And obviously Erica, of course, obviously being very much team Ted right now, is still 100% saying, hey, look, you're a piece of crap. You're only really doing this to spite Ted. So here's what's going to happen. I'm not going to accept your offer. I'm going to still continue to work with Ted. And this is the last time we're going to talk about it. Otherwise, I will tell Ted about what you're doing. And she walks away, obviously, Stewart being a little bit more butthurt by that. I know eventually Ted kind of runs out of options, so to speak. I think the next witness they call upon was this therapist that I believe was in between the producer and the deceased. And she was vocaling her concerns about things, so that doesn't really do well from the producer standpoint. So I do know eventually Ted does go back to Amanda to plead to her to like assist him on this matter. Like, okay, if you don't want to be my partner anymore on this case, that's fine. But I feel like your insight onto the prosecutor could potentially create some confusion between you, that that the jury might be more inclined to, so if she's doing these very shady tactics to get what she wants, maybe a lot of the things she's been saying so far in this case has been kind of for naught, which is a very valid point. So so with that being said, so Amanda does agree, because again she at least wants to get that showdown with her to kind of put it into her, like put her in her place, and if it does help out Ted, that just it's a additional tool in the fire pit here. So from there, do we get to the next court date? I'm not quite sure. I don't even remember. There was most likely a call scene between Erica and Rick, where Erica kind of tells Rick about what Stewart just offered to her recently, and obviously Rick does not take it too kindly, so to speak. And I know I'm kind of out of order here, but I know not eventually, but like Samantha finds out about it as Samantha's already berating Rick for trying to pull a slight gag on a associate that has a peanut allergy by putting fake peanut butter in the fridge. That's like you twist the top and the snake comes out. That prank. That prank. And Stewart just wanted to see what his reaction would be, kind of as a joke. That's when Rick comes blaring in, yelling at Stewart for even thinking about offering his job to Erica, and even saying that if you want to decide that again, go ahead. I just won't be here anymore. So he storms off. Samantha obviously is mad at Stewart, and she leaves as well, leaving Stewart to be like, damn, so far, Stewart, like, a couple of weeks ago, I was viewing Stewart as, like, an innocent person that's just kind of caught in the middle of it. In this episode, he's kind of a dick. Kind of really hard to, like, side with characters if the constant perspective of things keep changing. So I believe from there, we head back over to the main case where Amanda is put on trial. And even though originally it's a bit confusing, because, like, wasn't this woman assisting with the prosecution, like, less than, like, a couple days ago? And apparently the judge is like, she can be called upon a witness, doesn't matter her job title, so she doesn't. Ted immediately goes through the entire, why does she have beef with the prosecutor, where apparently this was a murder case. Amanda was defense, and she was still the other side was still the prosecutor, and she sadly did manipulate some of the evidence pieces to assure she would win in trial and send this innocent man to prison. Amanda did find something in the back end to appeal and get him, his sentence revoked. However, just before that trial, the prosecutor leaked another article to the press, supposedly that he was also responsible for the death of a gang member. And then once that word got back to the prison, a gang member of the affiliated variety shot him dead, which ended the whole thing. And Amanda never was able to like kind of move past it, considering the fact that the prosecutor knew she was about to have her entire legal strategy completely usurped from below her, and she knew she was going to lose that retrial. So the fact she even planted a fake story just to kind of cover herself, because she knew there were gang members of that of who she picked in that prison, that she knew eventually that they were going to come after him. So, which again, it's really shitty. It's a really shitty maneuver. But sadly, Amanda never got to prove that in a court of law. But at least the point of her saying like this is not the first time she tried to leak an article for her benefit definitely started to cause a little bit of a usurp within the jurors. However, the prosecutor rebutted that with just, Amanda's using her personal feelings for that case against her, and that should not be validated in this current case, as these are two completely different circumstances, and that all she's trying to do is put a murderer behind bars, and Amanda's is always in her way, trying to paint Amanda as the villain, but Amanda still managed to get her words across, which still managed to do a bit of damage to the prosecutor's representation. So at least there was still some accomplishment on that front. So we adjourned for that one. I know we get flashbacks where this was just after Ted was told that by Kevin, that their assistant from the faking the voice a couple weeks ago was killed by Pellegrini, the mob boss that Ted's going after.
Just it?
Yeah?
Did you order food?
No.
Whoever ordered food, I brought it in from Mongoose, okay?
Oh, that's probably the guy across the way. If you want to go, give it to him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
My insurance is gonna buy me a new car too. Thank God.
Oh, thank God. You're lucky. Usually
Yeah,
they're...
I know, right?
Yeah, just make sure they don't raise your adjustables.
Oh, they already did.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. So this was just after Kevin was speaking to Ted about that their assistant from trying to nail one of Pellegrini's generals out was sadly murdered. So we cut to the next day where by the time Samantha hears about this, she knew that Ted was responsible for it, that he put him in the cross lines, and now he's been killed for it. So she just needs some time away from Ted. And Ted tries to explain to her, like, I didn't kill him. It was Pellegrini. And she's like, yes, I understand that, but it was still like she told him, why'd you get him involved? Because if you're messing with you don't mess with your partner's business with your business, because it's going to create a nasty business, which is where Ted is kind of sitting in right now. So without that being said, Ted tries to still explain to her, like, look, I'm gonna get Pellegrini. This is gonna make all the sense. It's gonna repair everything. And I'm just like, Ted, my dude, she's literally telling you, you got him involved in the crossfire. You should have at least done something to mitigate this. You should have done that. And he didn't. So, regardless of the case, we'll come back to that later. Ted goes to meet up with Amanda, consoling her that even though the results weren't exactly where they were expecting, it still was very much a victory for them, that it did at least damage her reputation, at least. And that still was a victory on that front as well. I know we eventually returned to court. We were eventually about to pursue with closing arguments, this time ending with a cross-examination of the primary suspect of this case, going for his, version of the events. And everything seems to be going well. He's just keeping to the story that he created. Everything seems to be going well. However, before the prosecutor can go with her side to conclude the case itself, she does pull off another surprise witness, even though she already kind of yielded her time. She said, like, hey, I can do it. I may not be able to say any more, but if I got a witness, I got a witness. I can still put that into court. And this witness supposedly was present adjacently near the murder site. It was just until now she was not able to come forward. And obviously Ted's pissed off about that because, he was about to lock it in, but sadly she still pulled it out of it. So the surprise witness gets called. It's no one we know, but she was a bartender at a nearby celebrity's house. She signed an NDA to kind of just say, you were never present at this house. You were not here. You have no acknowledgement in this household. And she went for a smoking break, and she managed to hear part of the conversation that we already knew from the confession just earlier. But however, she's taking it out of context, thinking that, it was the producer that said the line, you're going to die, not the other guy, because she doesn't know how to discern voices. And it was still so far away that she wasn't able to fully entail what that means. But at least for the jury standpoint, the producers still, not the producers, the jury's still not 100% certain that what the heck's going to happen next. It doesn't really. So once Ted kind of, hears all that, he pulls him aside, kind of yelling at him like, every time, moment after moment, you just keep lying to me, man. It's like one thing, you lie. The next thing, it's a lie. The next thing is like, it's never been constantly, you keep to a story and that's it. It's never been like that. So obviously Ted still is pissed off at him, and even Kevin's there trying to lessen the blow, like, hey, look, I knew about it. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell you. So I'm like, look, all the blame's not on him. But again, Kevin, just let him take the blame. This man still withheld evidence in a court of law and to Ted. So I'm like, he still holds some fault there. So And then there's another scene. We had an earlier scene where Amanda was catching up with some work, Erica, and then later Kevin catch up with her, and that's when Erica kind of lets slip that she knew that that the producer was going to cause a scuttlebutt about the whole the murder admission, and even Kevin comes and says, "Look, I told Erica not to tell Ted. That was on me." Even though I know Erica's technically Ted's number 2 right now, that technically she should have told him. Like, I did it because I believe there was still validity to keeping this in the dark for the time being, and that if this does come back for penalization, I'll take the blow. So at least they are all in agreement there. So I know we get another flashback where Ted goes back to his apartment with Samantha to let her know that that again Ted just got confirmation that it was Pellegrini that killed him, not Ted. Ted had no responsibility whatsoever, but Ted still is being hardboned. I'm trying to say to you, Ted, that you still brought him into this case. You brought him in the middle of a gang conflict. You brought him in the middle of a lawsuit with this gang. You had to know this might have happened, and Ted found out there was a leak in his office. He's going to figure it out. He's going to wheel it out, but it doesn't matter, Ted. It's over. The man's dead. Samantha obviously cared for him because eventually you just kind of bond with your clients after a certain point, and obviously Samantha, she's not fully mad at Ted. It's not Ted's fault, of course, and she is mad at Pellegrini, but like, she just needs time. This is just her way of grieving. The funeral's tomorrow. She needs to go. She needs to present herself there. And that's just the plan right now for them to all she wants to is leave me alone for the time being, but I want you there at the funeral tomorrow. I need your support. And at least that's where they leave it for the moment. We'll come back to that later. At least for Ted back in the present, he has no other choices. He's exhausted all options. He has no choice but to go to Stewart. And as soon as Stewart sees them, as soon as they kind of reconnect, Stewart's like, hell to the fucking no. You punched me. You accused me. You said all this horrible stuff about me. You poached my client. That, again, none of this would have happened. Ted wouldn't be in the situation had he just left him alone. But, of course, Ted did it to protect his identity as a criminal defense lawyer so that his firm doesn't go under. Now, after everything Ted's done, this is the consequence of his actions. So he's kind of screwballed there. Ted apologizes to Stewart as best as he can, trying to make him understand, look, I was just not in the right mind space for any of those accusations. I apologize, but I know you as a lawyer. I know that you're not going to stand by and let this guy go to jail for something that he really didn't do. And Stewart, knowing that Ted knows, laments and agrees, okay, fine, I will help you out this one time, you asshole. So they pull an all-nighter trying to find any sort of way to dig Ted out of his current predicament, trying to figure out what's going on. Eventually they take a break to kind of reflect on things, kind of just talk about the matters at hand. And I think that's when, Ted kind of comes out clean and tells Stewart that, he's sorry for everything, that he didn't treat Stewart correctly. Now being back in the position that Stewart was in, it's not something he's comfortable with. It really isn't, but he kind of understands the hardships, the difficulties that come along with this career, with this case building, and that he should have treated Stewart with a little bit more care and responsibility when they were working together as peers, and that there's nothing he can do to rewind things, but it still is able to still get the words out of them, and that's what triggers Stewart for the idea of wait a minute, hold on, you said that admission, even though most of the court stuff is kind of locked in, the only thing that's still within our control is the divorce tapings, which the prosecutor wanted to let him in so she could start getting the falsifications against the producer to be present within the jurors. So now they can use that against him, and that's going to be their winning strategy for Ted to get out of this. So, but we'll cut to that in a little bit. Next flashback we see is where it's funeral day. Kevin shows up for support. Ted and Kevin are just going to go to the area to go meet up with Samantha and support her during this time. However, sadly, Kevin doesn't get a call from a friend in the PD department, in the police department, to let him know that they caught him. They're going to get Pellegrini right now. They got enough evidence against him to take him to court. And Ted, still be hardboned, wants to go to the arrest. He wants to go and be there when this guy gets caught. This is his case. This is his victory. He wants to be there. And obviously Kevin's like, nope, Samantha needs you. You need to be there now. Forget about this guy. And Ted's like, no. The guy is still there. He's still out there. I'm going to go and get him. And that's where we're going right now. And I'm just like, Ted, You just signed your own coffin. You really, really did. We're back in court. I know. Oh yeah, I forgot. There was one more scene where Rick goes to kind of tell off Stewart about his decision to try and offer Erica his job. He like completely yells and then completely destroys. And all Stewart has to say is that me and Ted made up. And I'm like, wait, what? Because that conversation didn't seem like a make-up conversation. It just felt more like Ted unloading his apologies to you. You didn't have to necessarily accept them, but yeah, I guess Ted and Stewart made up. I guess, question mark? Do I believe that? I don't believe so, but, regardless of what the case might be, at least in this time being, for some reason, Ted and Stewart are on decent terms. But it seems like Stewart's still going to have to do a long apology road for Rick, who's kind of, just flabbergasted by this recent development. From there, I'm going to say we cut back over to the court case properly, where Ted is now using his discovery with Stewart to his advantage, pleading to the court that he's going to change their determination mid-trial, switching over from not guilty to not guilty, but still committed the crime based on fear of life, which obviously, of course, the opposition is clearly against. The judge summons them to his quarters, and that's when Amanda joins back into the picture, and this is where they drop the news to her that so as much as everything in the court has been legit so far, the divorce proceeding does admit a fear of culpability for prevention for fear of life. And as much as the prosecutor does want to dismiss that, the judge does say, well, you were very adamant of putting this in the evidence to admit this to the court. You wanted that, and guess what? It's here. You wanted this to benefit yourself, but now it's benefiting your opponent. You got to accept that. And obviously she has no choice but to stay quiet and let it be. So with that being said, Stewart finally gets back called up in the stand, admitting his whole life story, admitting the whole backstory behind the killing, saying that, look, I know what I did was bad. I did it because I had to protect my own life. And at the same time that there was going to be a part of me that's going to say, yeah, it sadly is what it is, and now he's going to have to live with it for the rest of his life. He has no choice but to accept that. So he does so. I think the prosecutor tries to do one slight thing, but it doesn't really do anything. Sadly, everything's mostly locked in. But before, however, the prosecutor is able to destroy his last words, Ted does bring in the tape that Kevin thankfully recorded 4 days prior to this, which is before all this happened, so this can be a last-minute admission. It has been certified by an official videography department to confirm that this confession was recorded before all of this came to light, which makes it valid for submission. So once that's entirely played out, the prosecutor's side is basically over. The jury goes to deliberate after Ted's closing arguments, and after that point, so the jury comes back and the guy's not guilty. And that's great. That's a huge victory for everyone, a huge victory for all people responsible for, which is great, which is amazing to say the least. Obviously for me as a viewer, I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea how Ted was going to get himself out of this. I just honestly thought this was going to be another face plant down in the moment, but Ted somehow managed to get out of this, with using all his connections, using all his, tricks up the skills. He pulled it off. Thankfully, still respecting the privacy of still thanking his opponent, thanking his peers, and the producers just now you can go off to make your next movie, and you'll be fine, which is great. And part of Ted's closing argument was that he is declaring himself as the best entertainment lawyer in LA. And that no one's ever going to change that. And that today just proved it. We get the last flashback where Ted now has to face the fears of his actions, where he returns back to Amanda the next day, figuring out, where'd you go? I didn't see you last night. And Amanda's like, yeah, once you never showed up for the funeral, I decided to go ahead and go to my mom's for the night and reflect on things. That even when I beg you to do something to me, when I ask you, please come to my aid, please come to my care, you didn't come. And even though Ted's explaining to her, we got Pellegrini, we got justice. he's gonna pay for the murder. This is all gonna make sense. It's all gonna pay off. And she just tells him, no, it doesn't, because all this proved was that all you care about is your case, not me, not anyone else. Like, I'll never be able to depend on you. You will never be someone that's truly in my corner. Like, how are me and Eddie supposed to ever trust you? And obviously Ted's about to call her out for, like, for all he is technically for them, for their safety. But she's like, no. And with that being said, she did say, like, I'm going to take one of the LA offers. I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to start a new life there without you, because it's clear that if I'm in New York and if I'm with you, I'm never going to be first attention, never going to be first brass. So she basically breaks up with Ted, and that kind of leaves it there. And we get like a sideways where we cut back to present day, where Ted goes to Samantha to apologize to her after 15 years for his actions, for the individual's death, and he says that he should have done it earlier, and now, despite all this time, that he apologizes, and she forgives him. Well, supposedly she hugs him, and they share a nice somber hug as the camera fades to black, as that was it for this week's episode of Suits LA. I liked it. I liked it a good amount. Seeing kind of Ted face so many different angles of his weaknesses and his strength was great to see. Seeing how he's slowly beginning his fall from grace in New York, which we knew was going to happen. Like, we gotta have to find some way to bring this guy to New York. And then seeing on the opposite side Ted trying to, like, scramble to win this case, which again he's never done before. Trying to win his first criminal defense case was not easy, but him and Stewart kind of making up. Again, I didn't really have the solidification from them as, like, there was recovery to be made because of just how the show was set up to be at first. It is cool. Hopefully this will mean more bonding scenes between them, which is something I did like when we got to see them kind of, have their own space back in episode 3. And that's something I hope to keep seeing as we, now progress through the rest of the season. However, that's going to end up shaking the B. Having the main case concluded, I think it was smart. Whether or not this kickstarts whatever the second half of the season is going to be will be a big question mark when we do come back next week. But I think, in all honesty, that there is still potential here for them to do more cool things, even though, like, the main premise of things seems to be over for the time being. There definitely is still so much that they could do. And I think that's a little bit exciting. I mean, we didn't get much about Rick and Amelia this week. We know Rick and Stewart still have some bit of tension to work through, just a little bit, not too much. And, where does the possibilities go from here? Now that, Stewart and Ted are now kind of back in good standing, does that mean they give their friendship another try, give their partnership another try? Who the heck really knows? But I'm now more curious than ever to see how this is going to progress. Where does the ending of this story arc lead for the rest of the season? But with all that being said, I'm giving this episode 1.5 thumbs up. Let me know down below what you think of this week's episode of Suits LA. I would love to hear your thoughts down below. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. But I believe that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So if you're unaware, this has been What's the Two from ActionX. We're reviewing every episode in the hopeful first season of Suits LA. If you want to know what we're doing normally, What's the Two besides our Suits LA episode reviews, we are currently doing rookie season episode reviews each and every week after Brandon is on Tuesday nights on ABC. We would normally be doing Madlock episode reviews each and every Thursdays at the Brandon on CBS, and we would normally be doing Reacher episode reviews each and every week at the Brandon on Amazon Prime. But if you don't care about Suits LA, you're in luck. We should be back next week with another brand new episode review for you. I'm not quite sure where we're at. I think we have a new episode next week. I'll double check, but I'll let you guys know. But again, until then, we'll see you then. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, like, favorite, share if you want to. Ring that bell and follow us on social media to see more from us. But until we do, please stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.